All right, let's try this again. Get us some team viewers.
Okay, my team viewer is restarting right now.
Cool. So yeah, I guess we'll do for the hand history just like late stage. Did you make final table, or is this the 12th and the 12K?
Yeah, it's the 12th and the 12K.
Okay.
My bust out is just driving me crazy, but
Okay. So you said poker's been bad. Are you down a bunch, or
yeah, like a little over 1K I think for the past week.
it's quite a bit? Did you play the 540 though?
Yeah, I satellited in for $2. Well, it was a $2 rebuy, so like $6.
Okay. And
So,
Mark was just like, fire it.
yeah, I kind of just fired it without asking, but
Okay.
no, it was like they were doing ACR was doing this promo where they were doing this golden ticket promo
Okay.
where they're basically just giving you free entries into these $2 rebuy satellites.
Okay.
So I entered for free and then just took the $2 rebuy and the $2 add-on. So it was like $4 total. 150 player field with top two getting tickets to
Hmm.
the set to the Sunday Million. So yeah, I just played that and shipped it and
Sweet.
got to play the million. Yeah. Okay, there's the new ID there.
All right. You still getting deep runs last week, or not really, or what's up?
Yeah, it's weird. Like it feels like whenever I play, I'm usually getting runs. Sunday was actually the least amount of runs I had, and I had an eighth and a 12th, and also won that satellite.
Cool.
So I don't know. It feels like I'm constantly getting runs, but just not being able to put together a profit.
Maybe Mark and Ben, or Mark is right. We should just focus on some late game stuff,
Yeah,
which is
maybe.
like 12 to 20 the big blinds, anyways.
I don't know what's going on with my team viewer. Are you connected now?
Yeah, I can see.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so what kind of ranges do you have? Like, oh,
Okay, so this is 15 from the button.
mm-hmm.
Um, I noticed that most of my button ranges tend to be around 40% overall opening, whether it's a shove or a raise,
Yeah,
um, at pretty much all stack sizes. I mean, you'll see that they vary a little bit. At 18, I thought it was kind of interesting that my shoving and raising range is about the same size. I'm shoving and raising 21% each.
yeah,
Um, a lot more raise folds, but I found that these make a lot more. These all do really well as raise folds as far as how much profit I'm seeing from them versus an ideal responding range in hold'em resources.
yeah. I mean, these all seem like pretty reasonable ranges. I would say maybe they're a little bit on the tight side for opening, but it's probably pretty
Yeah,
good for
I thought
18
they were
bigs.
a bit tight, but I had trouble with opening them up too much more than this.
Uh-huh.
Then there's 20 bigs.
I mean, they all like seem logical. Like you're not choosing like absurd hands, like hands that make sense. So, um, yeah, seems good. All the hands you're shoving make sense. Um, Ace three off seems a bit thin, but it's probably okay.
Yeah, Ace Deuce off was extremely thin, so I changed that to a raise fold.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know if I like in game shove like ace six, ace deuce, ace three, ace four off, but that's probably
yeah,
okay. Can't be too bad. King nine off, I probably don't shove either. But yeah, the ranges look pretty good. I mean, I'd have some tweaks to it, but it's nothing significant. Seems like you went about it in like the logical, correct way.
yeah, cool.
Um, I didn't like
Um,
race calling 18 bigs with queen jack suited with like your 18 big blind range, but it's just like small tweaks or whatever.
mhm.
And
Yeah, yeah. Like if I look at small blind, I think that. Queen Jack suited. No, it's not in there for 20 bigs. Okay.
Okay.
I opened quite a bit wider from the small blind than I do from the button, but that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, seems you're shoving all these hands with 20 bigs.
Blind versus blind, yeah. I mean, this is kind of a default range, but a lot of things are going to change based on villain and the stage of the tournament, etc. But
Yeah, it seems like ripping like way too much. Like, did you check like what he can do versus your shove range?
I did. Yep.
Okay, it's pretty good. Like you have,
Yeah, it's pretty close. Every single one of these ranges, it's what villain can do is pretty close to their Nash calling range.
cool. Okay, yeah. I mean, I guess shoving Jack 5 suited's good. I mean, they probably overfold a ton anyways, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean,
For
I
sure.
wouldn't personally shove those hands, but it's probably okay. So, eventually, once we get into like limping, like I think a lot of these hands go into like a limp range, but it's really complex and you'll have to do stuff like splitting hands. You have to split up your ranges, and it's just such a huge step that we'll take it when we revisit this topic.
Okay.
Or you can try and work on it on your own now that you have like a good fundamental base, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I'll do that. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I want to. So you've been making a lot of final tables, a lot of final 18s and stuff, basically.
Yeah, seems like I've had a lot of min caches or like pretty close to min caches. And then a lot of the final tables I've made have been 6th through 9th.
Okay. So yeah, let's go over some of your deep runs here.
Okay.
So
Do you want to just go over one certain run or do like let me close out of this. Like this one I have loaded here is from Sunday, but it's a 12th place.
I guess we could do last 100 hands of this, or last 2 tables of this.
Okay. I'll go to last 100 and then
See where it leaves us.
yeah, let's see. This should be pretty close to last 2, I would think.
All right, give me a second. Be right back.
Okay.
Okay. All right, cool. And you have 15 bigs. Can you hear me?
Hey, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so I was just getting the HUD straightened out there.
This is definitely in our min raising range.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so a thing we'll do is now that we have a good fundamental base for opening, we can really focus on the spots and find excuses to deviate rather than focus on what our range should be. You can just focus on excuses to deviate from what our range is. So we'll focus on that during this, and maybe we'll do some ICM spots, but you're like 12 left, so it makes it kind of impossible.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is just a min or slightly over min, but when I get flatted twice, and because this board is so wet, I decided to just kind of bomb the flop and commit myself. I could see checking back or also betting smaller here, but I just kind of decided to bet bigger and commit myself to the pot and kind of force my opponents to shove or fold, I guess.
Okay. So here's like an interesting exercise. It's kind of a tricky one, but I want you to try and construct an argument against yourself.
Construct a what?
Construct like an argument against your argument. Like, if you were to argue
Okay,
against
so
yourself, like, what would be your arguments here?
my argument against c betting would be that
I mean, well,
both the
you're first of all betting, and then second of all, like, your sizing as well.
okay. So I guess my reasons for betting and my reasons against betting and against this sizing are kind of the same reasons. They are basically that both blinds should have fairly wide ranges for just slatting pre-flop.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of those ranges just whiff on. I mean, this is a wet flop that sort of connects with those ranges, but because those ranges are wide, they're still going to whiff this flop fairly often. And even if they did flop like a dry second or third pair type hand, they probably still could just be check folding here, except for a big blind. Probably big blind has to really go with anything here.
Mhm.
Um, Small blind doesn't. So basically, the argument against would be that we could be missing a lot of value by c betting and also by choosing this sizing when our opponents completely miss this flop.
Yeah. So, what argument do you think wins out, and why?
I I think the argument for c betting is good, but the sizing argument should be should be the sizing should be smaller. The argument against my initial argument, I think, wins with the sizing, but I do think that c betting is good here.
So,
Uh,
you argued against yourself effectively. You missed an important point, though. You're like,
okay.
I want you to attack all the points you made for betting. So, you made the other point about wanting to commit yourself. How would you argue against that?
How would I argue against wanting to be committed?
Yeah.
It's well, I mean, it's pretty obvious here that I'm committed when I make this bet. Um, I may, I don't really necessarily want my opponents to know that I'm just committing myself here. Like if I just see bet like 4 or 5K, um, there's still a there's still a pot size where I have a pot size bet or less left, so I'm still really kind of committed, or I just have one bet left.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not as obvious,
Mm-hmm.
and my hand doesn't look as strong, so it's kind of unnecessary to go with such a big sizing here.
Yep. So, like, yeah, I mean, I could have broken that down for you, but, like, I just want you to kind of learn that habit of constantly trying to be your own devil's advocate, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
Um, it's hard to, like, learn on your own 'cause it's hard to be, like, a good devil's advocate for yourself, but it's like a skill you can improve upon. So,
Mhm.
anyways, yeah,
Sure.
like, your sizing doesn't need to be that big for the exact reasons you stated.
Yeah, it's definitely way too big.
Yep.
But okay. I'm enjoying using the arrows. It's much easier.
I know. I did a session today with Jamie. He's like another guy who does coaching, and he just flies through these hand histories. It's so nice.
Oh yeah.
'Cause we're like both pros with it. So
uh, I actually had a student on Saturday that I kind of showed the shortcuts to, and it helped him a lot because he was pretty slow with everything.
yeah, the buttons suck.
So here,
It's
I think
clearly in our
I
open
could
range.
but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
This is clearly in our open range, right? Not in the
Yeah.
shove range.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I could definitely see open shoving this at some tables with the right stack distributions.
Mhm.
This is not one of those.
Yeah.
If there were more players behind me that had less chips than me, or around the same stack as me, I could see sometimes open shoving this, but here, I think the open is okay. And then when Vic rips it on us, he has 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 bigs. Unknown, basically, 45 hands. My HUD I changed around a bit since the last time we did a session, but basically this 20 is his raise first in, 40 is his steal. So he does seem to be, over a small sample, somewhat positionally aware and widening his range pretty well in later position. I don't think we're doing too well against his range here. I think it's probably a fold.
Yeah, I think a lot of people I coach are unsure about these spots, but they all kind of end up having the same range as me. It's very rare that like we look at reshell spots and I have a different calling range than the people I coach.
Okay.
So either we're all kind of playing bad or we all play these spots like intuitively pretty well. But I'm sure you probably fold ace-10 offsuit here too, and then call
Yeah.
ace-10 suited, and you call about 7s or 8s or something.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yep. Like ace-10 suited, I even don't love it.
Yeah.
But
if I pulled like 40 people, they'd probably all say about the same thing. So
yeah, makes sense. So yeah.
So do you think we should go wider than like our charts here, like tighter?
Let's see. Just looking at some of the stats around the table, I think we could actually get away with going a bit wider here. Reason is because we're probably in the money here, and there's probably a pay jump coming up. Also, it looks like most of the players behind me don't flat too much, don't flat opens too much. And also the big blind folds pretty often. So those are all reasons to go a bit wider.
Okay.
Big blind over 284 hands folds his BB 70% of the time to steals, which this isn't really a steal since I'm opening from EP or MP, but that's still a useful stat. I think he's still going to fold fairly often. So yeah, I think we can go a bit wider here.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah, I kind of agree. So yeah, looks good.
Cool. All right. Big blind spot. So it's just going to be a defend. Flop checks around. And we just check fold turn.
Thoughts on betting?
Leading turn, yeah, I think that's reasonable. They both villains do have kings in their range, but basically, I think if they don't have a king, we basically win on the turn if we lead.
So I want you to start the hand from the flop, and I want you to put yourself in Travis Sun's shoes and think about what he actually checks a 5-3 deuce board with.
Okay. I think he probably checks medium strength made hands, so like pocket pairs, 2 overs with a diamond. Actually, I think those would probably you bet some decent amount of time too. Yeah, I guess like pocket pairs. He shouldn't really have too many top pairs with 5x. Some 2 over combos. Some of his really strong 2 over combos, I guess. Although I would tend to see bet those most of the time, but
So there's a logical,
too much about him.
trick you can make here. So when you go to the turn here, You're only concerned with, is he ever going to fold the hand when I bet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's all. That's what we need to know. If the answer to that question is no, like logically, if he has none of those hands in his range, then it doesn't make sense for us to bet, right? Ever, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that should be the first question you ask, because if the answer to the first question about his range is, if the answer to that question is no, he never has a weak hand when he checks this flop, then you don't have to do any more thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yep.
if the answer to the question is no, he never has two cards between six and queen that aren't like diamonds or clubs, then you don't have to name all his value hands. You don't have to name all his ace highs. You don't have to do any of that shit. So you can kind of skip ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Um,
Yeah.
So logical step, like if you're thinking about bluffing, like asking whether or not he has air is generally the good first question. Like if he ever has a hand that can fold, it's a good first question.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, makes sense, but I think that ace high here, I mean, are we considering ace high here just air, part of the air category, like ace queen, ace jack?
Well, so if you answer the question that he could have ace queen ace jack, then you have the second question. Then you go right to the second question: does he ever fold those? And if the answer to that is no, then you always check. If the answer to that is yes, then now you have to compare how many value hands he has.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, so yeah, like hand reading follows like this logical type of process where we have to think in the correct order, and otherwise we kind of waste time. You only get so much time to make decisions. So breaking down like the logical process you should go through is helpful. So
Cool. Yeah.
even if you come to the same exact result as someone, but they started first with all the good hands and then the bad hands, and you just did the bad hands first,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to like profit in the long run, theoretically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Okay, yep, go ahead.
Cool. So yeah, so I think that leading the turn here is pretty optimistic.
I think he folds 0%.
0%. Yeah, I was gonna say like maybe 10%,
Yeah,
but
I'm being ambitious.
yeah. Okay.
Yep, so we always check. Okay, so this small blind spot, do we deviate from our chart here? So we have 14 bigs.
Yeah. No, this is a open shove. I'm pretty sure in our chart.
I don't care about this hand. We focus more on like range overall questions rather than your specific hand.
Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood your question.
You're
Okay.
terrible. No, go ahead.
So you're asking, should we deviate from the chart with our range here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, for future reference, I'm very rarely, like if you're confused, I'm very rarely talking about a specific hand, what you should do.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think we should. I think we should actually shove a bit wider, and we can shove wider than our chart. We can probably raise fold a bit more, so which means we might even be able to widen our raise calling range slightly, and then add some more raise folds in, and also add some more open shoves in.
Okay, sounds good. Why do you think that?
Because I have a decent sample on this player, and he's very exploitably folding the big blind too much.
Okay.
Also, just the stage of the tournament, and this player seems to have a really good stack. He probably has like well above average stack at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So for him to call off half his stack is a pretty big
Wouldn't it be
deal
better
at
though
this
if he had
stage.
like 40K?
Yeah.
Wouldn't he be like less inclined to call at 40?
Um, Yeah, that's true. Probably would.
Um, so like the shorter his stack goes, the more like aggro we're gonna play here, and the bigger his stack goes, the tighter we're gonna play. As like a general principle.
I don't know if I agree with that actually. I think that there's like a middling stack size where we can go wider. We can open our range up, but then as he gets really deeper, like if he had 145k here, like Damiani has,
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to be more likely to call off wider.
Hmm.
But at this middle stack, like around 70, I think he's going to be tighter. And then if he does have 30, I almost think he could get wider again, especially if we're, 7 or 8 players from the next pay jump. He's kind of like, whatever, I have a 10 big blind stack, or I guess that would be 13, 14 big blinds. I think at that stack size, people might tend to call off a bit wider and than they would at this middling stack size.
Is that what they should do?
Um, that's a good question. I don't really know if that's correct.
Okay.
Um,
So it's like a nice fundamental base. It's nice to know what they should do. And then
yeah,
like you can
yeah.
apply like those metagame observations.
I mean, chippy V wise, it shouldn't matter, right? I mean, it's just our effective stack that matters.
Yep.
But
But should you call more when you have 32k here or when you have like the exact chip stack as you do or 2x the chip stack?
I think you should call more with the 80k, 75k stack because you still have, if you lose, you still have a decent stack to work with.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But I don't think people necessarily do that though.
Okay. I mean, you can trust your read and instinct on that as long as you know that you're going against like the grain.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, if that's what you see, then that's fine. I mean, it's kind of a hard thing to notice, but because it's hard to know what people are folding, and it's hard to really know if you're analyzing that properly or what, you know.
Yeah, and this player has some pretty reggy stats, for lack of a better term, I guess.
That's a good term. I like that.
Yeah, which makes me think that they should be calling off more close to correctly than a lot of players would. Although there's kind of two factors working against each other here. One is the reggy stats, which would lead me to think they would call off more correctly, but also their big blind fold is pretty high. But that's kind of going to be a lot of hands that are deeper stacked, and it's not just an open shove. It's not a push fold spot. So
It's
I
not going
don't
to be
I don't
that
know if we should
representative of the spot. Yeah.
we shouldn't use that stat too much because it's
You still don't
it's
have
just
the call two bet pop up.
I should.
No,
No, this doesn't have call 2-bet on it.
no, you don't have that other pop up. It's nice because it gets a big sample, although it's less representative.
Yeah, so I do have call 2-bet on my main HUD, but it's not positional, of course. It's just 6% overall.
I like positional call two bet, seeing from all positions, because there's guys who they they love to three bet they love to flat the button, but they hate to flat the cutoff. And
Okay.
there's
Yep.
guys who flat the small blind a lot, and there's guys who never flat the small blind. The guys who don't flat the button, they three bet the button a lot. The guys who flat the cutoff a lot, they don't three bet often, and vice versa. So it gives
Okay.
you like insight to how they flat and three bet those positions. A lot of people just have different feelings about where you should flat the most, and some people think cutoff's better, and some people like to do it on the button. Some people hate doing it on the button. They just like three betting. Um, like go to this guy's positional three betting. Like a lot of people have patterns that you can weed out. Like pull up his pop up.
I'll definitely have to add that pop-up so I can see the call two
Yeah.
bet.
So yeah, his 3-bet buy position's like 2% on the small, and I bet you his call 2-bet in the small is probably the highest.
Which seems really weird. Yeah.
So yeah, it probably correlates with him flatting there a lot. Let's see if we can pull up that stat somehow.
Which stat do you
Call
want?
2-bet by position. See if we could add that in somehow.
How will I do that?
Click that little chip.
Click up here.
Yeah.
Oh, I can change. You mean you want me to just change the HUD
Yeah.
that I'm using?
Change of, you have to make a change to the HUD, don't you? Or does one of these profiles have call 2-bet?
Probably just the default one has the pop-up.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never used the defaults. Oh, it's kind of ugly, but see if I can find it here.
Yeah, pre-flop.
Oh yeah, here we go.
So
Pre-flop.
I'm gonna guess his call 2-bets. Okay, so he just plays super nitty on the small blind. Never flats cut off. Flats button sometimes. His call 2-bet. Like, you get a pretty big sample. Like, he's only called 16% in the big blind. I think that's pretty good information.
And 10% 3-bet from the big blind. So he's 3-betting quite a bit from the big blind, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Doesn't flat. Yeah.
Try Funky's call 2-bet. Let's see if we could see anything here.
What did you want to see?
Funky's, the guy 2 to his left. That's so ugly. Yes, so yeah, he's like, so yeah, you get a 27 hand sample on the big blind, which is kind of nice. He never flats cut off. I'm going to guess he 3-bets the cutoff more than he 3-bets the cutoff like more than all the other positions is what I'd guess. Go to tools, and now you can see his 3-bet by position, and he doesn't 3-bet anywhere, but he loves to 3-bet the small blind, like 19%.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So yeah, I think like if you just look at the stats, you'd see a 5 or 7% 3-bet is actually super tight when he's cut off and button, and pretty laggy when he's small blind. It looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So yeah, I think positional stats are pretty important once we get samples.
Yeah, I actually intended to put this pop-up on my HUD, the one we were just using, but what I did was just this tools tab somehow.
Yeah, try and get the other
But I'll
ones.
go back and make it so I have all these tabs to access.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, they don't take up any space, and you only use them when you need them. Like, they never get in the
I could
way.
probably just add that real quick if you wanna, and then we could go back to the other HUD that I use in game.
Yeah, because this is way too ugly.
Yeah, it shouldn't take very long. All I have to do is go in and go to edit HUD. Should just take a second. So first I have to go to tournament professional, pop-up groups.
I mean, as long as you have the pre-flop one.
Oh, they're all separate. That's annoying.
Just get the pre-flop one. Like, that's... Or just get that call 2-bet stat.
So what I have to do is export it, and then I have to go to my other profile that I made, which is this one, and import. Go to the pre-flop.
Boom.
Then go to the table groups. Click on, how about number of hands? And then go to the pop-up, say pre-flop.
Cool. You're a
And
beast.
that should do it.
You didn't hit apply, though. Does that matter?
No, if you hit OK, it does the apply.
Cool.
Apply is basically just to test out changes, like on the fly if you
Oh,
want to
okay.
do it while you're playing or whatever.
Cool.
Okay, so
Now we go back to your old HUD. Okay.
all right.
And see if it works.
There we go.
Cool. Let's see it for you. Let's see if you have any tendencies today.
Oh, I didn't put it on the hero HUD.
Oh.
I can definitely do that
That's
real
fine.
quick though.
You don't have to if you don't want to.
I think it might be worth it. I mean, it only take me should only take like 1 minute to do it.
Seems like a good investment.
Let's go to hero.
Hero.
Pop up is going to be pre-flop.
You're good with this. I wouldn't know how to do this.
I've spent a decent amount of time playing around with this. I mean, I pretty recently changed this HUD, the one that I use, this one that I use in game. It used to only be one row. I added a lot more stuff to it.
Cool. Okay, let's see if your pop-up works. Super high in the big blind. Pretty linear everywhere. And let's see your 3-bet by position. I mean, it's a small sample. It's only 250 hands, but we'll see.
I don't see the 3-bet. Where is that?
Oh, that's on your first pop-up, the initial pop-up that you have.
I don't have that for hero. I only put this pre-flop one.
Okay, that's fine. Let's go. It won't be a big sample anyways.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
So like with those stats, when Funk is in the small blind, I guess we should be tighter when he has like a 3-bet stack.
Yeah, yep, that's good to know. It looks like he pretty much just 3-bets or folds out of the small blind, like he never flats.
Yep.
I guess we could talk about opening range here from cutoff. We haven't really done too much cutoff range work, but
yeah, I mean, I think your cutoff, like constructing your cutoff range should be pretty simple once you've already done small blind and button. Like it shouldn't change all that much. I mean, it should like be like pretty logical and kind of easy to do.
Yep.
So yeah, I think you'd just be able to kind of do that on your own. I think it's interesting whether you want to be tighter or wider in that spot.
Do you want me to go back to it, or do you want to just?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I almost think that this is a pretty good spot to just play like almost the exact range that we would construct, and not really go tighter or wider. Maybe even go like a little bit tighter. Don't know big blind. Button seems like a pretty solid reg-ish player. Small blind, 3-bets, a decent amount. So maybe we want to go slightly tighter than normal here.
Okay. Question about the small blind. Do you think he thinks he has fold equity when he shoves?
No, I don't.
So
that's a good point.
Yeah, like putting yourself in their position, stack size wise, is pretty important. Like, how does small blind feel facing your open? How does button feel facing your open with that one shorty and that one big stack in the big blind? Because he can't just rip, you know? Is he gonna be fine going to 15K with 10-9 suited here and then calling off your jam? Or is he gonna like just have to fold because there's the shorty behind and you're so short, you know?
Yeah.
those are important questions. Putting yourself in his shoes, because I think there are a lot of players where if you're in the button shoes,
I mean,
go ahead.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's
I was
better when
just
you talk. I talk too much, anyways.
okay, fair enough. Uh, um, I was just gonna say, if I was button here, I would definitely have a ripping range versus my cutoff open.
Yeah. Some people don't like shoving 24 bigs though.
Yeah, true.
So he might be a little bit worried if the big. I think the spot changes quite a bit for the button if the big blind has 35K as well.
Yeah, true.
It's much easier to just hit the all-in button.
Yep. Yep, that's very true.
So being able to put yourself in their shoes and try and beat their spot, especially when they're regs, is very helpful deep in the game because you know they're paying attention when they're pretty deep, or at least they're more likely to be.
Yeah,
And you know that they probably do some thinking of some sort.
sure. Yep.
It's not perfect. Sometimes he just like doesn't think or thinks about the game way differently, but it's easier to guess Rig's thought processes than ours.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so next time I ask you about a hand, I want you to kind of put yourself in their shoes and think about it like that.
Okay.
Next time
makes
I ask
sense.
you about an open, so hopefully we find another spot.
Okay.
No, you just go ahead.
Yeah, I tried to. It's lagging.
Rip.
Okay, we got a limp.
Yeah, I personally shove pretty wide here. I don't think people limp here as a trap on the first limp.
Yeah, I tend to shove here pretty wide. I do like to have a raised calling range here too, because I think people tend to like limp call here with weird hands if you make it like 8K or like 8, 9K. People will like limp shove some strange hands here.
Okay.
So like, yeah, I would rip pretty wide, and then I would have some pretty strong value hands that I would raise call. It's kind of just an exploitative thing where I don't think I really have any raise fold range.
Okay.
But sometimes versus players I think seem pretty like fun players.
I'd have a raise fold range with like really shitty offsuit hands in this
Okay.
spot. Because everything else makes a lot of money checking, and I'd be happy to just raise some really shitty hand that doesn't make much checking and be really polarized post flop.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
So it would be like my really crappy offsuit stuff that maybe could flop a straight, like 9-5 off, 8-4 off, 7-3 off, 6-2 off type stuff.
Okay. And then for raise calling, I think for me here I'd probably raise call something like, I don't know, 8s plus, ace 10 suited, ace jack off, maybe. Yeah, I guess that's about it. Yeah.
I think I'd go like ace jack suited plus 9s plus, ace queen
Okay.
plus. But both ranges are fine.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
And I just shove this.
Looks good
Okay,
now.
fold. And the other thing about that spot that we didn't really touch on is this guy. I only have 38 hands on button when when button limps here. But over those hands, he's limped 11% and folded 100% after he limped and got raised, which is only one instance, but still useful, I think.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd shove like 7-6 suited and shit for sure there.
Yeah, yep, definitely. Ace deuce off, I would shove.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, button. I think this should be a shove.
Okay, so how do you adjust your range here? Would you play the range you have in your chart, or tighter, wider? Why? Like, put yourself in their shoes.
Um, Again, probably a bit wider than standard, because of the stage of the tournament, because um, small blind folds 80% of their small blinds to steals. Um,
And he never calls small blind?
uh, what if I raise?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean I'm gonna have a raise call and a raise fold range.
I mean, put up the small blind stats. I want to see his call 2-bet and 3-bet by position here. Okay, so calls like an average amount, 5%. It's not really much of a caller, like looking at all the stats. And then pull up the other
Yeah,
pop up. Okay, so he 3-bets the small blind hardly ever, basically.
yeah. He just doesn't play the small blind very often.
Mm-hmm. Um, he does 3-bet quite a bit higher versus like cutoff and button opens, but it's small sample again.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. And big blind, we already said he's pretty damn tight and doesn't 3-bet the big blind either. Or does he?
Um, I think he does a little bit, but he doesn't really have any fold equity here. So
He's done it once, so 4%. It's not very many.
yeah, you can't really 3-bet too wide here.
I think he has a perfect shove stack with 12 bigs. I think that's his widest shove stack you can have. Like the best shove.
See, I think like 15 bigs would be better because he should have more fold equity when he's 3-bet shoving 15 bigs, right?
Yeah, he definitely has more fold equity, for sure. He gets a better price on his shove, though, at 12. And he still
That's
has
true.
fold
Yeah.
equity. I don't know what's better, but he still has full equity with 12 bigs. Like, if you raise king 9 off, you have to fold here to shove.
Yeah.
So,
True.
so he definitely has full equity. Anyways, skipping that. Positionally, they both play the spot very poorly, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So how would you adjust your range here? How much wider would you go?
Maybe like 8% overall wider. I'll play 8% more hands. Some of those would be open shoves. Some of those would be raises.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a pretty good adjustment.
Okay, why not a bigger adjustment?
Um, I guess just to stay somewhat balanced and not make it really obvious and really easily exploitable that I'm opening super wide. Um,
Yeah, do you remember when we talked about confidence intervals in spots
yeah.
like this?
Yes. Yep.
So yeah, how confident can we be in these stats? Or
I think that not we can't have like 100% confidence, but we can. I think we can use them pretty heavily. I mean, especially small blind, we have 500 hands on. When you actually look at their positional stats, it's not very many hands, but I still think it's like a decent sample for to give us an indicator of how they play those spots.
mm-hmm.
So I think that they're pretty useful, and we can be pretty confident that their actual stats are somewhere near what we're looking at here.
Yeah. So you're pretty confident, but you're making a pretty small adjustment because you're opening like 40 here, and you're going to like 48.
Yeah, I would maybe go to like 50.
Yeah, which I guess is like a 25% increase in your range.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to argue. Um, I would say I would ask though, like looking at the extreme, like what would it take to go 100%? Like how big would the sample have to be? How confident would you have to be to reach there?
Um, I mean, if big blind is sitting out and small blind, I have 500 to 1K hands on or more, and they are playing way too tight. Or vice versa, small blind sitting out and big blind is that case.
Hmm.
I would go close to 100%, I guess.
So only when one guy's sitting out.
Well, I mean, that was like, I guess, an extreme example.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I can't really think of too many situations where both guys are playing here that I would go 100% here.
Hmm.
I can't really think of any situation where I would do that.
I do it pretty often. I don't know if that's correct or not, but there's a lot of spots where I feel really confident that they're both gonna fold like around half the time
Okay.
collectively. But it's hard to really argue against you. Like,
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't really have a great argument myself for why I don't go 100% here. Um,
I wouldn't go 100% here. I'd go around like 50, 60, 70 or something like that.
uh-huh. Okay.
But there are definitely a lot of spots where I go any too. And I think I've had, I mean, I definitely remember times I have quite a bit of success doing it, but then there's definitely a lot of times where I have stacks like this and lose two big blinds and two more big blinds and blind myself down, you know?
Hmm. Yeah.
But I think there, in my experience, I'd say there's any two spots exist a lot more than you think they do. But
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I have a lot more blind versus blind spots where I would go any two. Um,
yeah.
but button, it's just when you have two villains to get through, and there's a lot less certainty
Hmm.
in the samples.
Yeah. There's
Um,
there's not
I don't
much.
know. I don't
The,
find them as often, I guess.
yeah, I mean, maybe I'm just being stupid, you know. So, but anyways, go ahead.
um, okay. So we shove and gets through. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of button spots where you can go any two. I I think maybe I'm just not as good at picking up on them.
Yeah, there has to be a way where we can like either understand information more clearly or kind of group people together so we kind of have like more data, you know,
Yeah.
like group them into populations so we actually get data on people even if we don't have many hands, you know.
Hmm. For sure. Yep.
Um, this guy who's like buddy of mine who's like a trader on Wall Street, he had this uh, he had this interesting he had this interesting problem, and I'm trying to remember the story. So, imagine you're playing someone, and he could bet between I don't know 1 and like 10,000 chips, and he'd bet each chip amount he bet. So if you bet one, he'd do that with a specific hand. He'd bet two, he'd do that with another type of hand. Three with another type of hand, etc., etc.
Hmm.
And so the question was like, how do you exploit him? Like, how long does it take you to exploit him? How much information do you need to exploit him? And the simple way is just wait till he makes all these different bet sizes, and then you get all the information. But took it took all the time it took him to make 10,000 bets, right?
Yeah.
So
Sure.
it takes quite a long time. The second option is like getting that information, inferring that information from somewhere else, and being able to make better decisions right from the get go, or as soon as possible. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
understanding the populations help quite a bit better. So if you had those stats somehow on Bovada where the player pool is different, I think you can open wider, but you kind of never get those stats, right?
Yeah.
Um,
True. Yeah.
but yeah, figuring out ways to kind of group these guys together, population tendencies, is probably a really important part of when to steal and or how much to adjust and all that shit.
Yeah. I think I tend to try to play on Bovada more. I make decisions more based on population tendencies, just naturally because the samples are a lot smaller. We never really get any sample on anyone.
Yep, makes sense.
Um,
Um, yeah, that's why sometimes I look at their overall stats and they kind of tell a story. So, I don't know, pull up CC's overall stats and just pop up. So, like, if he's in the small blind in that spot, and I look at his overall stats, and they're pretty, like, underwhelming for 3-bet. Like, he doesn't 3-bet in any of these positions, and I think that's all data we can use, you know? Like, when he's a small blind, the fact that he doesn't really 3-bet any of these positions, I think, is relevant. And the fact that he doesn't call opens in almost any of the positions is pretty relevant, too. So I would use all that data together. And another example is if he opens cutoff and we're on the button, pull up
Hello.
CC. Hello?
Hey. Yeah. I just lost you there for a minute.
Okay.
It was weird.
Where did you leave off?
Um, you were talking about how his stats are relevant. Like his overall, the fact that he doesn't really call two bets overall is pretty relevant when he's in the small blind.
Yeah. Even his 3-bet from all positions, I think, is relevant information. Um, Another thing you can use is look at his cutoff open. Say he opens the cutoff and you're the button.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Pull up the pop up and look at his race first then. So if his cutoff was 33% and then his button was 30 and then his MP was 15 to 20 and his EP was 12, that's a way different story to me than the way it is now.
Mm-hmm.
And you could have a way higher confidence interval and that he's opening pretty wide in the cutoff with these
Mm-hmm.
stats.
Yeah. Sure. Yep.
So yeah, I guess
All makes sense.
learning how to infer from all the data helps quite a bit.
Yeah. Definitely.
Anyways, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, no decision here. Guy just shoves into me with aces. So
Cool.
come on. It's not going to the next hand. There we go. Looks like we won with aces.
Okay. That ace 3 spot. Should we go wider or tighter or same range?
Um.
Start with putting yourself. Start with the big blind. Just focus on him. Put yourself in his shoes. Then work your way, like counterclockwise.
Okay. Um. I think we should go tighter because there's a couple of good reshove stacks here and here. Big blind seems to be defending decently over a small sample.
Mm-hmm.
Also, he has a huge stack, so it's pretty easy for him to defend wider here. Guess those are the main reasons.
Yeah, and it's like a pretty good job of putting yourself in the big blind shoes. I want you to put yourself in the small blind shoes though, And
Okay.
I want you to give him, like, think about how he's gonna feel with specific hands here.
Okay.
Like, how does he feel with, like, give him some kind of marginal hand and put yourself in his shoes. Some kind of decent hand, I guess, rather.
Um, I mean, he's gonna. I mean, with a hand like, I don't know, a marginal decent hand like ace, I don't know, ace seven suited. Um, he can't really feel super great about shoving that where I'm opening under the gun.
Yeah, here's a better question. Like, just think about what a tough shove spot would be for you. What hands would you have a tough time with in his shoes?
In small blind shoes,
And the guy to your left shoes.
if I open,
Yeah.
um, tough, tough decision to shove. Ace 10 off, ace 7 suited, fives.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all like pretty tough spots, I guess.
So, yeah, he'd shove about sixes, maybe ace 10 off.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wouldn't shove ace 10 off, but
Yeah.
especially
Ace 10
because,
off
like,
is,
given how tight you've been.
yeah, I mean, even ace jack off is like kind of a tough spot.
Yeah, so we say he has a reshove stack, but he's probably like playing about 8. Pull up like an equity calculator and see like how often he's continuing versus your raise.
Maybe like that.
Yeah, so about 9%, maybe 10%.
Yeah. Could have some flats, I guess, but I doubt it flats very often.
Yeah, it's pretty unlikely. So yeah, I mean, he has this reshove stack, but he's handcuffed. He can't do anything.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
So you should look at his spot and just understand that he's pretty handcuffed right off the bat.
Okay. Makes sense.
Secondly, ask the same question for Funk YC. So he has no fold equity. He's seen you play pretty tight, and he has like 8 bigs. Like, what can he shove versus you?
I think he should shove quite a bit wider than the player to my immediate left.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like this. Something like this, maybe.
Yeah, and like king queen off as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not sure if the ace 8, ace 9, ace 5, ace 4 is good.
Yeah, that's kind of thin. Maybe something like this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably something like that.
Just 12%.
Yeah, which is certainly wider, but you get to call the shove and run your equity with pretty good hands versus him.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So he's kind of handcuffed too, in the sense that he can't shove that wide because he always gets called, and he has three people behind, too.
Yeah.
So you have 2 opponents that are handcuffed. The third thing I want you to notice in this hand too is that the button sucks.
Okay.
And the reason he sucks is because you only have 35 hands on him, and if he was a reg, you wouldn't have 35 hands on him.
Yeah, and over those 35 hands, his stats indicate that he's a fun player. 15% call to bet is pretty high.
Yeah, and you're playing like a $20, $30 buy-in with like 600-700 players in the field, so the average person's skill in this tournament is pretty low. If this is the 109 15K on Wednesday or Tuesday, then that's way different. I don't even know if that runs on Tuesday, but then the average player skill goes way up too.
Sure.
And that would actually change your spot. Like your opening range should change if this is the same exact layout, everything's the same, but you change the tournament and the date of the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Like your
Yep.
range should change.
Absolutely.
So, thing I want you to work on for these late game spots, which is really important, is putting yourself in your opponent's shoes, understanding what they could do more, diving deeper into their stats, understanding how they play when you have sample on them, and getting a feel for these opens. Like, just knowing when to open, knowing when to 3-bet is such a huge part of the game. So, go over hands like this, different tables, deep in tournaments. Like, you already got like once you get a feel for the table, skip to a new table, and just break down different opening spots, and put yourself in their shoes, break down their stats well, and analyze their skill level too.
Okay.
All that's pretty important. So I want you to work on that and kind of just master like when you can deviate from your chart.
Okay.
The way my buddy does it is he kind of just he'll move it he'll move up his opening range by one position. So like that button spot, he would have like moved it to like his small blind range instead. Like he'd open his small blind range because he thought it was good. Or if he was hijack,
Okay.
he'd open his cutoff range, or maybe go from hijack the button if you really like the spot, or hijack the small.
Okay. Makes sense. Yeah.
It's not like perfect, but it's a way he likes to do it. I don't know if you'd like that too, but anyways, we have the charts, but the problem is they are something we should seldom use deep in tournaments, and we should just learn how to deviate.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
there's a lot of data here that's just hard to find, but the best players kind of find it and pick it out. And yeah, if everyone
Yeah.
just
That makes
played
sense.
with like the data of like these like basic numbers and whatever, you know, um, never mind. I'm gonna end that thought. I'm done talking. um, you you have a good blueprint to go on. So think about this stuff. Construct some more ranges. I think you're doing a good job, and you're fine moving up to like the cutoff and the hijack and all that shit. And I want you to focus on this late game stuff, like figuring out how to open and 3-bet. And I think we're gonna go. I want to go from there, and you can work on the range construction for 20 and under on your own, and eventually we'll go to like 20 and 30 bigs, which becomes more complex. And that's the plan.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right, dude. Talk to you later.
All right. Later. Thanks, Daryl.
See ya.